It's a hard meal to make. I went in first, I was so much, I get nervous. I was so nervous and so, I'd be so careful, and it was like at lunch, and I just went for a salad. And I kind of those tons. Yeah, I was careful. And that's crazy. I guess it's now you're sharing how the other the first time we got. So sick. I was like that night. I was like, maybe we should leave this conference. So then I was like, I really can't eat that. So I bought a bunch of like honey bars for Dr. DJs, also it's not delicious. Well, they're like the salad, but it's a bunch of pieces. So yesterday morning I went yeah, exactly.
You look like 12.
I know.
I think there was a picture in there of you in wardrobe.
Yeah, I'm with these bifocals like this.
I look at you guys and it comes from mom's side of the family. That's what they say. The hair comes from the mother's side of the family. Absolutely.
But like, I almost think it's funny because I was bringing up a story when we were over your house one time and Roger was downstairs.
Yeah.
She's like, what are you looking at? I'm like, I'm looking to see what my hairline's going to be in a few years. I'm looking at Roger.
Those are great pictures.
Yeah.
Right.
Greg, when did you move to Costa Rica? What year did you move to Costa Rica?
Did we go there?
Yeah,
2010.
2010.
August.
We visited.
I know. We had breakfast there this morning.
Yeah, I was going to say.
What time did you get here last night?
No, we got here about 10:30.
Oh, nice. How you doing? Are we ready? I got 100. Because Audrey would always talk, of course, about anything, and visits and all that sort of thing. And your trip to Italy, you were yeah. I saw some pictures. I don't know. I think
There's a couple in there.
Greg put one online, and it's like, so many good things. That's what I'm saying. Good memories. Kind of funny. I really didn't think about this until this morning.
And you know,
Sorry about that.
anybody else? Yeah, we talked about it last night. She's in Costa Rica for so long, it's just used to not seeing her that way.
But anyway, please sit down. It's not very nice to meet you.
Anybody else you see? Okay. I didn't get a chance to really come up and say hello. No. You want to say something? Yes.
It's crazy, isn't it? I was just saying this.
Yeah, I saw it. I know.
I'm good. So who's this? This is Deanna's
Oh, do you? You're not missing anything back here. The paper is gone south. Not you see news 3 days after it happens.
Yes, you want to speak. His name is James.
Greg, Nancy's phone. Right.
So you like this?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
No, that's scary.
But I got about 5 minutes to go. I'm sitting here reading all day.
That's right.
That's
No, not that I know of. Well, is that your comment?
Yeah, the girl that you're.
Let me see if she wants to say something.
I don't even know. Is the current superintendent here?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I have your attention, please? I would ask if everyone can find a seat as we get ready to start. My name is Art Sutcliffe. I'm the chairman of the Little Festival Foundation, and I'm also employed by the O'Donnell Funeral Home. And it was my pleasure to put this together for Audrey, as she was a dear friend for years, not just to me and my wife, but to my daughter. Audrey was very, very close. And Greg, we feel your pain, buddy. Okay? But Audrey was always smiling, always had a joke, always was the life of the party. Ask anybody that hit room 903 during a Little Folk Festival. But, well, I'd like to start, like I said, I don't want to make this too religious, but I would like to start with a prayer. And if you would just bow your heads and listen. Jesus, let your presence manifest in this place. As we gather here to mourn our beloved Audrey, may you bring healing into our hearts. Be our Alpha and Omega in this funeral service. Let the things we share about Audrey bring joy and healing in our hearts. We know it'll be hard for anyone to fill a gap that has been left in our hearts. But we also know that in days, weeks, months, and years to come, you will heal us. And what we will be left with are the fond memories of the times that we spent with our dear Audrey. We thank you for giving us a chance to spend time with Audrey while she was on earth. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to call names, those people that would like to say a few words, and whatever. But let's remember, it's a celebration of life, Audrey's life. And we want to make it as a celebration. So first, Kathy, dear friends of Audrey and Greg, I'll have you come up and...
Good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kathy Boucher, and I've known Audrey for more than 40 years. I know you're trying to do the math, but I'll share that I met Audrey when she was 17, and from the outset, she would become one of the most important people in my life. As I reflected over the past couple of months about her and started to write this morning, I realized that we shared the trait of procrastination. But more importantly, I realized that if I didn't write this, I could pretend that she was going to walk through the door and I wouldn't have to say goodbye. How do I sum up the impact that Audrey had on my life? I can share that she was much more than a friend. She was like a sister that I watched grow from a teenager to the amazingly complex woman that she was. I'll share a few of the qualities that made Audrey Audrey. First, she was determined. She was a child of the acre, raised by a single mom, and Audrey was driven to achieve her goals by pursuing an education. It certainly wasn't an easy road for her. One challenge was that she never drove. She walked or relied on public transportation to travel to Suffolk University and later to Harvard to achieve her dream. One time I noticed holes in the bottom of her shoes and wanted to get her a new pair, but she declined, not so politely. And I learned how proud she was and how determined she was to make it on her own. She was fiercely loyal to those that she let into her life. She became so much a part of my family and played an enormous role in nurturing my daughters to make sure that they grew into strong, independent women. We shared many Sunday night dinners with my entire family, and at one point even shared the same little black dress for those important events, marking reservations on the calendar to make sure that we were covered. No matter how much time passed between visits, we always picked up where we left off, more like a treasured sister than a loyal friend. Finally, she inspired me to reach for my dream of returning to school for my education degree, encouraging me, challenging me, and talking through educational topics with me. She nurtured my girls by exposing them to the Women's Week activities, especially the breakfast. Year after year, we would attend, going to school late after, and being part of the journey of so many talented women. The last breakfast before she moved to Atlanta, she presented the girls with the Congressional Proclamation. Audrey believed in herself. She believed in the strength of women working together for the betterment of each other. Through her involvement in education, local organizations here, and in her adopted country of Costa Rica, Audrey embodied the message of that proclamation. She lived her life exploring how women individually and collectively nourish the spirits and inspire dreams for all women throughout the world. This isn't really a goodbye. I know she's in the hearts of many people, and as long as we remember her, we'll all continue to be inspired by her spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Now I'd ask Michael Grenier to step up, please.
Good afternoon. For those who don't know me, I'm Michael Grenier, and Audrey and I were the closest of friends for over 30 years. We met through my sister Kathy while Audrey was teaching CCDF at St. Patrick's here in Lowell. I'm proud to say that I was her best person at her wedding to Greg, and she was mine at my wedding to my husband, Julio. Words cannot understate the extraordinary impact Audrey had over my life over those 30 years. She was the first friend to whom I confided that I was gay, and she warmly accepted and supported me. When we were younger, we spent many nights drinking coffee and having long, meaningful conversations. She had such a passion for justice, for knowing and feeling that the world could be so much better than it is. During one of these late night conversations, Audrey told me of how important the idea of community was to her. And as with so many things, Audrey spoke of community with a passion that I didn't fully grasp. She always felt things so much more strongly than the rest of us. Since February, as I reflected on her life, I realized that she lived her life by finding, embracing, and fostering community wherever she went. Her time at St. Patrick's, the years at Middlesex, and her time in the National Park, bringing her into the folk festival world, which is itself a celebration of the diversity of communities. And finally in Costa Rica with Greg, starting and running a Bar of the People, and being so warmly embraced by the local Tigo community. Audrey did this through her wonderful offbeat sense of humor, her warmth, and her ability to welcome and celebrate people from many walks of life. This was her gift that she shared with all of us here today. Audrey, I grieve that we lost you so soon and so suddenly. I will end by simply saying thank you, Audrey. You meant so much to me. I love you dearly and will miss you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Kathy's daughter, Deanna, if you'd like to say a few words.
Good afternoon. My name is Deanna Jimmel, and Audrey was my godmother. When I began thinking about speaking today, it occurred to me that I would be speaking from a place of envy of most of the people in this room. Most of your memories of Audrey are from the perspective of an adult. The majority of my memories of Audrey are from the perspective of a child. Memories from childhood are fuzzy at best. The details swirl and fade and become intertwined in ways that simply don't make sense. However, the benefit of memories from childhood is that the feelings you experienced stay with you so vividly. How lucky am I to have had such a close bond with Audrey during those formative years? Words like determined, energetic, friendly, and passionate describe Audrey, but they don't capture her. I'd like to reflect on Audrey through the feelings I recall from my childhood. Please join me as I work backwards through some of my favorite feelings caused by Audrey. The first is that of joy. Audrey came over to my house after finding out I was pregnant with a gift of 2 loveys for my baby. She said to me, "I don't know much about babies, but here you go." Fast forward to a few months later, and she was jokingly fighting with my mom and just kept saying, "Give me the baby." And "You get the baby all the time. It's my turn." Turns out she may not know much about babies, but she sure did love them. The next feelings are those of both humor and protection. It sounds like an odd combination, but they work. Audrey and Greg came over to a Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house this past fall. We had turkey, which my husband Adam and I raised ourselves. This was really the first opportunity Adam had to interact with Audrey. So when she apologized if she made him uncomfortable with one of her jokes, he made the mistake of saying that she couldn't offend him. The rest of the night, Audrey would redirect the conversation surrounding the turkey and its upbringing, not wanting to know any details of the life before it was on her plate, and instead spent the whole time trying to make Adam uncomfortable, which he, of course, gave right back. Audrey did jokingly threaten Adam at our wedding as a protector of me, to which he said, "Not many people scare me, but I do trust that she means what she said." Going back into more of the fuzzy memories, I remember the feeling of pride and later understanding when Audrey would state that she and my godfather were primarily political godparents, which worked out in my favor. The feeling of enthusiasm as I played the biggest game of hide and seek at the folk festival, except Audrey didn't know she was hiding, and my mom usually knew where she was taking us. The feeling of admiration when I'd look out my bedroom window into my backyard, where I'd see Audrey sitting with my other family members during a cookout, thinking that I couldn't wait to be like her one day. Finally, the biggest feeling that has stuck with me through all these years is the feeling of empowerment. Each March, I'd attend the Women's Day breakfast, where I hear about incredible, powerful women and their impact on history, not necessarily realizing the impact of the woman sitting right near me. And so today, I stand before you, a woman writing my dissertation for my PhD, aspiring to be a college professor, following much more closely in Audrey's footsteps than I had once anticipated. If I can do nothing else in my life, I hope to have the impact on a young girl's life the way Audrey impacted mine. As Maya Angelou once said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." I, for one, can promise I will never forget how Audrey made me feel, and for that, I am so thankful.
Thank you, Deanna. Folks, there's some chairs up here if you want. There's some seats. You don't have to stand. At this time, I'd like to have Charlie Marcus come up.
Life is hard. The hardest I've ever laughed was with Audrey, and the hardest I've ever cried was on Audrey's shoulder. We all in this room lost our best friend. We lost a rock. We lost that one friend who could tell us what we need to hear and not want to hear. Life without Audrey is going to be harder. For almost 20 years, Audrey has been a part of. For almost 20 years, Audrey's been there for me through some of the darkest times of my life, and I always am grateful for her friendship and guidance. The best advice she ever gave me was keep my wife and get rid of my shrink. Greg, I know hurt and I know pain and the feeling in your stomach and that weak spot in your chest, but I also know that you will make it through this. I know this because we have some of the best friends in the world, and they're all in this room right now. Take your time, utilize your space, and let your friends work their magic. We can't bring Audrey back. However, she left so much of her soul in all of us that we can keep her spirit alive. Can't wait for you to move up here. Bye.
Thank you, Charlie. Madeline Ramez?
So I wasn't planning to speak today, but Greg asked me to, of course. So, but please bear with me as I kind of get some thoughts together. Laughing with Audrey was one of my favorite things to do. And at any festival across this country, connecting with her, catching up with her, laughing with her, and our family filled me up. She fills me up. And it was a necessity. That was one of the first things I would do, was to connect with Audrey, to figure out when we were going to spend time together at any festival, Montana, here, Richmond. And it's surreal to think that I won't be able to do that any longer. And Greg, I want you to know that you are being held all across this country with people who love you both so deeply. The photos that you've been posting and being able to re-experience that beautiful wide smile, that joyful presence, is huge. Her heart is huge. She was a light. She was an absolute wackadoodle. As a brilliant human being. And it was so much fun to be able to celebrate her 50th birthday with her in Costa Rica. And what a great memory that remains. And so that's our Audrey. And we love her, we continue to love her, and we love you deeply.
That's a new word we're gonna have to incorporate in our folk festival. She's wackadoodle. Janet Leggett, would you come up, please?
Where'd that box of tissues go? Anybody who knows me knows I probably will need these, so I'm gonna put them right up here. It's not so nice to be here today. It's nice to see all you folks, but I wish we were here for a different reason. I have a little picture with me of Audrey and I when she moved. She gave me a set of 3 pictures of the two of us because she didn't want me to forget her. Those of you who knew Audrey knew that's kind of how she was. It's like, don't forget me, don't. And so I've been carrying one of the 3 pictures with me for about the past month, just because I feel like we're kind of still together. I didn't prepare any remarks. I wasn't thinking that I would say anything because those of you who know me know I'm a big baby and then I will start to cry. But I have to remark about the time that we were together working on the festival. Many of you know that my sister Susan and Audrey worked together at the park, and I came into it kind of late in the game to work with the Festival Foundation. So the 3 of us worked very closely together, and we became sisters. That's kind of how we would refer to each other, and it really felt real. And the day that Audrey's sister passed away, my sister was, I had to take my sister to the hospital because she was jaundiced. And that was the journey that led us on the path to find out that my sister had pancreatic cancer. So it was a journey that Audrey and I traveled together. It was not a fun journey, but the only way that I went through it was because Audrey was there. And then after they had both passed away, it was Audrey who kind of kept me going, along with my other little group of friends. So we were all pretty close together. And she just kept us laughing, because that's what Audrey did. And that's the biggest part that I'll miss, is when she would come back here and we'd get talking on the phone and we would just laugh about whatever was going on in the world. That was the best part. I'm always going to remember that laugh and that big smile and the big hugs that she would give. And she might not be with us physically anymore, but she'll always be in all of our hearts. And I made it through. But I'll take this one out.
Thanks, Janet. And an old friend that led the parades in Lowell with his magical umbrella, George Price. Would you come up and say a few words, please? You didn't bring your umbrella.
It's in the archive.
Okay.
Or it was.
We break it out on occasion.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. I'm so pleased to have heard the remarks about the folks that have known her in a personal way and all the things that you've shared. It's certainly very special. I worked at the Lowell National Historical Park for about 15 years, starting in 1980. And I was actually there when she started as a high school intern. And I probably have one of the only recollections of anybody else in the room. I thought she was shy. I know that's hard to believe. But remember, our offices at that time were at 171 Merrimack Street. It was just above a commercial building, and she was back in the library area working on some projects. And Sue Leggett, who's already been mentioned, really got to know her well and started to take her under her wing. And she said to me that, we have this very special kid that's here, and, Sue really could tell things about people and thought that she would be, something special. And I think that's certainly an understatement, as you've all heard here today. I just think, especially when you read the things in the obits and about her academic accomplishments and what she means to all of us, it's really remarkable. I think one of the things that she got right off the bat, having worked in the National Park Service for many years, sometimes we're focused on the material things. We're focused on the historic site, we're focused on the historic room, we're focused on the battlefield, we're focused on all these things. Well, right from the beginning, Lowell was a very special place. When they talked about the immigrants, it's in present tense, for instance, in the legislation. And Audrey really got that it was all about community. You've heard people talk about her in community already. And she understood that about the story. And this was a place that she loved. And I think her focus on community was very, very special. I think that, like all of you, laughing with Audrey was really something. But I think really watching her grow was really something special. And then when she met Greg, that just added a bonus. And I got to tell you, Greg, your wedding during that festival week was one of the best ones. We still talk about that. I mean, I remember, when you were all standing there on the tree and we went around the corner and saw the tent and, all the music and all the fun the entire day was really spectacular. And then when she started to accumulate her degrees, and then when she was teaching the courses, and then when she was broadcasting from your sound booth area on Market Street Park, I mean, all these things were really terrific. I think one of the last times I saw her was actually at whatever the last festival was, and caught up with you guys on that stage. I think the last thing I just wanted to mention about this special person is that we've all loved her as a person, but the one word that I've been thinking about the last couple of days was impressive. I mean, when you think about her accomplishments and you think about how she has been so outgoing and loved all of us and could pick up where we start off, as one of her friends mentioned, I think was really, really remarkable. And I'm certainly glad that she's someone that I had the chance to meet during my life.
Thanks, George. James Deutsch, do you want to come up and say a few words, please?
Actually, this is a nice segue because what George was talking about, her impressive accomplishments, and particularly in academics, is what I'd like to address. We've heard people talk about Audrey as the life of the party, or loving, caring, wackadoodle. But for me, it was her accomplishments as a scholar. Some of you, I think many of you know that she received a PhD at Georgia State University with a dissertation titled Adult Learning in Non-Formal Settings, Cultural Festivals as Spaces for Socially Situated Cognition. And she did her research at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, where I have worked for the last 20 years, and by interviewing visitors to the festival, particularly in the Bhutan program that took place in 2008. So I'll read just a few sentences for you to get a sense of her scholarship and serious academic chops. She writes, questions for possible study. And this is from the conclusion. Questions for possible study include, how does the multisensory nature of an event or experience relate to visit assessments and outcomes? What role might more authentic cultural representation play in social cognition? When does the presence of other learners help rather than hinder learning from events of this type? How can a museum or other organization mediate visit experiences in ways that do not usurp individual choice and control? Gaining insight into questions such as these is essential to creating effective and innovative adult learning opportunities in non-formal settings. That's some serious writing and raises some very provocative questions. And I'll just conclude with the final sentence of the dissertation, which refers to the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. It says, the Living Museum of the Smithsonian Folklife Festival does offer and facilitate dynamic and authentic opportunities for cultural contact and social cognition. And whether Audrey intended this or not, I'm not sure, but that final sentence, I think, reflects upon Audrey's own life, this idea of dynamic and authentic opportunities for cultural contact and social cognition. That's Audrey Ambrosino. Thank you.
If I could have Gary Rosen please come up and say a few words.
I don't have a lot of prepared remarks, but I did need to prepare some dates, as they tend to slip by these days. Unfortunately for me, I probably knew Audrey for the shortest amount of time for anybody here. But fortunately for me, I probably know Greg longer than anybody else here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about our background, and kind of how Audrey came into my life. It was different than I think most of you, because she came in and I got to know her through Greg. Greg and I first met back in the late 80s. He was working for a recording equipment company down in Fort Lauderdale. And we became friends pretty quickly. Friendship kind of changed into more like brothers. Neither one of us had one, and we became each other's brother for a very long time. He worked with us at our studio, building things. He and I had a business where we made speakers. And at one point, he invited me to come to Washington for this festival. I've never been to a festival like that. So I went down to the Smithsonian and was really quite intrigued. The following year, he asked me to participate, and we recorded the main stage at the festival. And for the first time, I got to understand the nature and the community of the festival people, and it was a wonderful experience. Greg and I continued to be very close. He lived in Fort Lauderdale. His mother was in Chicago, and they would both come to New Jersey to my house for a holiday, which was kind of strange. So we were fairly close for a long time, and Greg was, he was kind of a bachelor and kind of doing his own thing out there. And imagine my surprise one day when I got a call from Greg, and he goes, so I'm getting married. Okay. Anybody I might know? He said, no, you haven't met her, but you'll like her. Okay. I think a little quick legal procedure to get Audrey on his medical coverage in Atlanta, kind of a quick informal thing. And then about a year later, the wedding in July of '05 with the legendary Joe Wilson. My wife and I came with our twins, who were then 5 years old at the time. It was an interesting exposure for them to meet the crowd. It was great. I guess in April of 2013, Renee and I flew down, got our first look at our Puente Negro, and spent time with Audrey and Greg. And what had happened from really that first phone call was there was no longer Greg. It was now Audrey and Greg. And Audrey came first. And it was pretty clear. And for me, wanting to see my dear friend well taken care of, he had found his mate. He had found somebody that was his equal in so many ways. It was wonderful to see. And Audrey had this amazing skill. Academically, she was amazing. She was talented, but for me, what she had was the most amazing ability to disarm people, to make you comfortable. It didn't matter who you were. If you were in her presence, the tension in your shoulders went away. You just had a good time. She made everybody feel comfortable all the time. And for that, I'm appreciative for Greg having the years with her. I'm appreciative. She's a wonderful person. She was great. And it will still be Audrey and Greg.
Thanks, Gary. I tried to compile a list of those that I could reach today to come up and say a few words. But if I happen to miss somebody, and if there's anybody out there who would like to come up and say a few words about Audrey, Greg, please step forward.
Yeah.
Andy.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Andy Wallace, and I've known Audrey for 30 years. I've been associated with the National Council for the Traditional Arts for a little over half a century. Known Greg for pretty close to half a century. And been in this town, which I dearly love, for 35 years, for all but the first festival. Audrey, she was such a force in nature, a vibrant and compelling presence that it's hard to believe she's no longer with us. I first met her 30 years ago during the early years of the Lowell Festival. She'd just become public information officer for the National Historical Park at a precociously young age. I was working for the NCTA, putting together the program and the stages for the festival. And Audrey's job was to take me around the local radio and TV stations and other media outlets to promote the festival. In the course of making the rounds, we became friends. I was immediately struck by Audrey's razor-sharp mind and zany sense of humor. Over the next few years, I had great fun hanging out with Audrey and all the other folks who were involved in putting this festival together. Fast forward a few years, and Audrey and my old friend audio engineer ace Greg Lamping became an item. In 2005, these two peas in a pod were married at the Lowell Folk Festival, as we just heard, with the Reverend Joe Wilson presiding. As it's been said, this was a match made in heaven, or wherever we're headed. Shortly thereafter, the happy couple decamped for Atlanta for a few years, where Audrey got her doctorate, and then to Costa Rica, where they bought a bar and welcomed folks from all over the place. It's already been mentioned, there was a fabulous 50th birthday party for Audrey down there. She continued to work on the festivals and was one of Van CTA's first string of stage presenters. With that mind of hers, it didn't take her long to get the facts down. Audrey was, or is, the embodiment of what's so special to me about this community of Lowell. The girl from the acre, against all odds, had a profound effect on so many of us. Right now, she's probably hanging out with Sue Leggett, Sandy Walter, and John Green, and Zenny, these pros, and all the Lowell folks who made this such a special place. Rest easy, Audrey. My old friend Jim Griffith used to say, if I don't see you in the future, I'll see you in the past.
Thanks, Andy. Is there anyone else like to say something? Max, come on up.
I'm an art lover.
Oh, well.
That means something different now, doesn't it?
Yeah. That would be the same.
Yeah, I had to write prepared remarks because I have a potty mouth. Good afternoon. Allow me to begin with an apology. The life backstage has removed a great measure of my civility, and remarks today are not intended to offend the good people of Lowell or the solemn implications of this occasion, but to celebrate the memory and spirit of Audrey, who became part of one of us, the crew. They're all sitting back there. I'd like to thank, and you can blame Greg Lamping for inviting me to speak today. Greg is loved by all dogs and stagehands equally. Greg is feared by golf carts across America. Greg's picture is prominently featured in the National Hotel Security Guard Emergency Manual, indexed under noise complaints, occupancy violations, cannabis-scented candles, and a whole chapter dedicated to the improper use of traffic cones. If you don't recognize me by my picture in the Lowell post office, I'm Max Asno. I'm a seasonal Lowellian. I've been supporting the Lowell Folk Festival for over a quarter of a century. It began for me at the JFK stage under the legendary engineers, monitor mixer Ken Durr and Dean Langwell in the back of the room. I stole my beard from stage manager Van Mertz one day while he was napping backstage. Dwayne Winters came along after Van. Dwayne's meticulous time management and keen oversight inspired me to abandon the gig, leaving Peter Calais to do his bidding while I assumed the role of backline manager with my partners, Gordon Langlo, Gordo, Mike Patillo, Laird Nolan, who drove me here today and reviewed these comments from my aforementioned potty mouth, and Keith Jones. Between the five of us, a river of Guinness and a cloud of smoke that told the tales of 1,000 nations, we managed to make an easy job look difficult. A trade secret that this feat was expertly accomplished by a lone superwoman we called Jane Lee Kelly, also back there. Hello, Jane. Lowell was a pilgrimage to us. Even during the dark years of COVID, I returned to Lowell with my fishing buddy Keith Jones to search the canal system for the elusive inflatable Merrimack mud shark. It's here today in Laird's trunk. We briefly formed a throuple, but the swells of the siren song of the canal's murky waters and the custody battle of a Mary Bachman rubber duck ended our former relationship, sadly. Those unfamiliar with festival backstage culture should know that Greg and Audrey became a single word, or Audrey and Greg for some. Their hotel room globally became famous for their hospitality and the hub of our stage life. Each night, this overstuffed room of crew and musicians conspicuously consumed mass quantities of bacchanalian delights into the wee hours of the morning. Somehow we made shows happen. We lived deeply for each other in the course of this work. We fully celebrated each city, every moment, and emptied out every package store within radio range of the festive operations trailer. I'd be castigated for divulging the details of the crew room private concerts, our hallway bowling tournaments, the Steve Fisher tales, the Dennis Blackledge bail bonds. They all remain private. One can only imagine the sultry nature of the artistic decor from the 99-cent stores and the party kit road case that went everywhere we went. But what happens in room 100 stays in room 100 to protect the innocent. There are, however, poignant moments of innocence, moments of love and loss. And if I might, I'd like to ask you to indulge me with a deeply personal recollection of a night that actually changed the course of my life. Would that be okay? Let's go back to Bangor, Maine, where I became helplessly addicted to a dangerous and unregulated drug known commonly as kettle corn. It began with a handful and became a 4-bag-a-day habit in the course of a single festival. Late one evening, lost in my sugary bliss, I buried my desire to Audrey and Ambrosino. It was a full, unopened, 3-foot-long, fresh bag of kettle corny goodness. Suddenly, everything else became fuzzy. Only the corn and Audrey were in focus. Time itself seemed to stop. As we gazed into each other's eyes, unafraid, bolstered with desire, an intercourse of sorts ensued. The music swelled. You can almost hear a rhythmic thumping by a bass player sporting a tawdry mustache as Audrey and I danced like corn stars, passionately, until the fury of our lust burst the burgeoning bag between us. Popped kernels covered the carpet with a caramelized consummation of candy bliss. Frenzied by the sounds and sights, countless co-conspirators climbed through the courtyard window, clamoring in the all-night maze. The rest of the details are sealed by a court order, and I've been in therapy ever since. I'm slowly making progress, and just last week, with the help of my doctor, I was able to find the right sugar and oil ratio, but without Audrey, it just doesn't taste the same. The show must go on. While Audrey may not be standing among us with a popcorn concoction to instigate the hilarity, she will remain the life of the party and forever in our hearts. Godspeed, Audrey, and love to all who loved her, especially those who could not be among us today. I'm an art lover.
Well, that was an insight to the festival, wasn't it? I know you all want to join now, just to get the kettle corn. Is there anyone else that would like to say any words? Sure.
I'm like Janet, so I probably need the tissues wherever they went. I was a blow-in 1980, and I was here because 2 different people from completely different sectors of my academic life said, "Oh, you'd really like this place because there's a lot of labor history, and it's all and women's labor history. You have to check out Lowell." Anyway, so I first drove through here when George was talking about the wherever the office was, and it's good to see you. Anyway, I digress, which I often did with Audrey, and it was always fun, as everybody said. And as the person before said, some people can make really easy things look difficult. Audrey could do that maybe, but she definitely could do the reverse. She'd make things that were really hard not only look easy, but be fun. And it was really because of Audrey that 28, 29 years ago, a thing called, which many of you know, Lowell Women's Week, citywide Lowell Women's Week was initiated. And that was because I was at UMass Lowell, whatever it was then, and involved with women's studies, psych and women, and all this stuff, grassroots women's stuff. And we did things on campus then related to Lowell. And we invited people from the community as well as people from the university. And surprise, surprise, the community people usually came quicker and stayed longer, which was great. But anyway, at some point I got a call from Martha Mayo, who was working in the library in downtown and very involved with the park. And she said, Audrey Ambrosino told me to ask you, would you like to have a meeting so we can talk about this Lowell Women's Week thing and see if we can do something together? And the idea was we'd exchange, we won't double book on the same day because we'll try to publicize each other's events. There was the park, University of Middlesex, Girls Inc., the Quilt Museum. I'm sure there were others. Anyway, we had a little meeting and at Middlesex, and Audrey and I invited different people, and that was the idea, that we would coordinate our independent, separate Lowell women's related things. But by the end of the first meeting, literally like an hour later, we had such a good time. I'm sure Audrey must have been facilitating the meeting, either that or disrupting it. Anyway, we had so much fun, seriously, that somebody said, probably Audrey, why don't we do something together? Not just make our own things, get a little bit further away from our own institutions and kind of come together in an informal way. And that was, as I say, almost 30 years ago. And for the first, 10 or so, Audrey and I first got to know each other. One of the first things I remember is Tess, who's still there after all these years, and Audrey from the National Park, and being at UMass Lowell to talk about media images of women. And anyway, the main thing is that because of Audrey, not only was she a whirlwind in terms of the work she did with us and for us and connecting us from, the old time Lowell, the mayor, the informal groups, Middlesex. She basically was somebody who from A to Z was involved. And as everybody else has said in many different ways, it was always fun. And I got to know not only the formal, some of the formal ways that things work, including some of the institutions I mentioned, but also things like the Worthen, places where you could go, or Life Alive, just to be like healthy as well as have a glass of wine or two. So I just wanted to mention not only mine, but I know I speak for so many other people, some of whom are in this room, who knew and loved and worked with Audrey, and we'll have her in our hearts and in this town and wherever else we go. So thank you. And I didn't even need it.
Is there anyone else who would like to come up and say a few words? We could probably go on all day and talk about Audrey, but we've heard a lot. And if not, Greg, you want to say a few words?
I'm going to keep this very brief. My mother always told me that the Lampings had a terrible affliction, that we were born with our bladder too close to our eyes. So I'm a bit of a sap. I cried at Seabiscuit. But I just want to thank you all for coming here today. Audrey and I had a love that was like nothing else I ever had in life. We shared a common background, parental-wise. We shared an intellectual passion. We shared an intimate passion. We shared a humorous passion. She was just the best. And like everyone here has said, it's Greg and Audrey, and it'll continue that way for a long, long, long time. Certainly my time. So thank you for coming. We'll all, I'm sure, get together after the thing. And I just want you to know that I love you all. Audrey loved you all. Audrey loved this city. And this city sure loved Audrey. Thank you.
Greg, there's a hole in all of our hearts. But the joy Audrey brought us all will go on forever. And when we see you, we'll see Audrey. Okay? And I hope that's a
One more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing. I've made the decision for a lot of reasons that I'm coming back to Lowell. And I kind of feel it's my home, and it is now.
Yeah. Well, we'll remember Audrey even more then.
Yeah.
The more we see you, the more we'll think of Audrey. And we'll never forget her. And I'm sure I speak for everybody in this room. Following our service here in this room, we're gonna have a little reception up at 50 Warren out off the lobby. Everybody, please come up and share stories, see Greg. There'll be a little food for everybody, and there's a cash bar, and let's keep it going, okay? For Audrey's sake, okay? All right. And also, we have a register book here. If you didn't sign it here, I'll make sure it gets out into 50 Warren. So if you're not going up to 50 Warren with us, please sign the book so Greg will have it for his memories of this day and all those that were here to share Audrey's love and affection for what she did for all of us. I'd like to close with one more prayer, as it is supposed to be a celebration of life, but that's all right. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you have made us in your image and blessed us with gifts of talent that we use to serve you. We thank you for the unique gift of our beloved Audrey. We thank you for the image of you which we saw in her, the love we received from her, and the memories that we will cherish of her. May we be filled with strength and courage to entrust her into your hands. Comfort us in our grief, Lord, and give us assurance of your promise of eternal life. Through Christ our Lord, amen. Thank you all for coming. I'm sure Roger's had a nice laugh up there looking at us saying, look at all these people. They're all crying, they're all worrying about me. But you know what? We don't have to worry about Audrey. She's in good hands, and we'll be there watching us. And making sure this festival goes off good in a couple of months. All right, that does close our service here today. Again, thank you all for coming on Greg's behalf, and hope to see you all at 50 Warren, right off the lobby. Thank you.